So we're in the garage today, and we are going to be replacing your drag link, right?
That's correct.
Why? What was going on that made you know that you needed to replace this?
So I'm in a 13. I'm about just shy of 100,000 miles, and I've noticed that when I get to extreme left turns, I hear a slightest little knocking. Got underneath.
Like a thump? Like you feel it or you hear it?
I can't hear it. It's a feel, but it those of us who Jeep, we know that feelings and sounds are kind of, synonymous.
Feelings are important when you Jeep.
But no, I can feel it knock just the slightest on those left. And so I got down and I played with my drag link, my tie rod, my what's the other one that's down there?
Drag link, tie rod, and the other one.
Track bar.
Track bar,
okay,
thank
sorry
you.
about that. I've already replaced my track bar, but my drag link has a lot of play. And
so when you're going all the way, it's almost like you're feeling like it's supposed to go, and then it like thumps, or like
it goes through just fine, but I can hear it knock. Something's holding.
Hear something hitting.
So the joints are loose, and I can actually move that bar quite a bit, which we shouldn't be able to do. So we're going to replace it.
And you chose what?
I went with Metalcloak. Okay. So I have a Metalcloak lift on. Hadn't replaced the tie rod and the drag link yet, and so my tie rod's good. So we're just going to do the drag link.
Okay, let's get started. Things I love about the Metalcloak, the look of the gold zinc chromate is awesome, but the fact that it is like really protective just adds that perfect element, right? It's like not only is this going to look really cool, but it's super beefy. I mean, you can see how big that is, how strong that is. But then it also is covered in this gold zinc chromate, which helps protect against the elements. Something that's pretty important here in Utah with all the salt and kind of elements we encounter when we're off-roading and throughout the winter. With everything unboxed, let's get this thing lifted up, take the tires off, and get at it. Remember, before you start, you want to get a tie-down strap and connect that to your steering wheel just to hold that in place so you don't mess things up when you're dealing with your pitman arm. One of the things we like to do is, just for safety, throw the tire that you took off, not the spare tire, but the actual tire you took off, underneath the vehicle. This way, if the jack stand fails, you've got something that's kind of backing up and helping protect you so that the vehicle doesn't fall all the way to the ground. Tires off. Now we're going to lift the axle back up again, take some of the pressure off of the drag link, make it easy to remove those bolts. So the first thing you want to do is remove this bolt right here. So we're just going to break it loose, get it loose here, and then we'll do the one on the opposite side as well. Because of the location of this one, rather than trying to get a ratchet in there, it's easier just to get a open end wrench and just stick it through the space right there above the sway bar. One thing to be careful is that you don't actually tighten the bolt instead. You have to be smart enough to know which way to go. There's a nice little thing you could say is right to tight and left to loose.
Yeah, but this is sideways. Which way is right and left when you're going this way?
Really? Ratcheting wrenches are the best.
So sometimes it's good to put your friends to work when they really just like to hide behind the camera.
All right. All the way off. So you'll notice that this doesn't just immediately drop. That's in pretty solid. This is being particularly stubborn. There it goes. Aha! It takes a bit, but don't worry, it will come through. You just repeat the process on the opposite side. So it's being particularly stubborn. So when this happens, you want to get something that'll help kind of grease the situation up a bit. Some WD-40. If that doesn't work, spraying that on there, then a little bit of heat, and you can use a heat gun on it. Now, you wouldn't want to use a heat gun on something that you were going to keep. In this case, we're taking the old one off, so it's okay to use the heat gun on it because it's going to melt the boot and the grease and things like that inside it. Just want to do a little bit light, and you'll notice we're hammering pretty hard on that. It's another reason why it's so important to tie that steering wheel down, because hitting that hard would potentially mess up your alignment. So this helps eliminate some spray right up on the top of those threads, so that way it goes down inside. Yep, just like that. Goes right down inside and starts to soak down in there. Another thing you could do is to help agitate or encourage that grease or that penetrating oil to go down inside there is give it a few light taps. The vibration will find a way for these little, grease spots to just, leak right down inside there. So let's give it a little bit of time. Let's let it do its work, and then we'll come back and hit this again. And of course, the moment you stop filming is when you get it. We hammered this thing pretty hard after letting that penetrating oil soak in a bit. Hammered this real good, and it just popped right out. So you can see here it is, all off and ready for the new one to go on.
One of the things that I've learned doing these projects with you is anytime you're replacing anything, it's the perfect time to clean things up and get it ready for something new. So one, it just looks good, but really for function, you want to make sure you have nothing standing in the way of what your tool is designed to do.
So we still have to put the ends in, but let's pull the old one up and put it next to it, and we can kind of get a comparison. We want to make sure that the length is the same as what we had before, so that'll be pretty important. Look at the difference here.
See how destroyed these boots were? And that's where I got all that movement. Of course, we put them to work with the pickle fork, but they were leaking before. Definitely time to make a change.
Go. So let's get it started, and then we can decide how
There we go.
how far in or out each side needs to be. So with everything lined up, we are going to take an exact measurement, make sure that we can replicate that on the new one.
13 JK, we need to be at 41 inches. And we need to scale down about 1.5 inches here. We're at 42.5.
So go in by 1.5 inches. Now make sure that when you're doing this, you don't just screw one side in and leave the other one out. You want to make sure that each side is about even in terms of how much thread you're using and how far you put it in to each of the end of the link itself.
1 3/8, and I'm 1 5/8 inches. So I need to do 1/4 inch on this side and 3/4 inch on this side.
So the instructions say to go 41 inches from here to here. That's what we got.
And it gives you a range, 40.25 minimum, 42 max. But 41 is the reference point that you want to get. And that's exactly what we measured on the stock.
So now we're going to tighten up these jam nuts, just hand tighten them, and then let's get the new one installed.
Okay.
Now, unless your tie rod's off, in order to get this in, you're going to want to take a rubber mallet and just kind of give it some wax there. Move it all the way forward, and that'll give you the right angle you need to get that back into place. Because of the space that's here, it's going to be very difficult for you to get this new joint into here. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen this just a bit, drop it down a hair, just enough to get this back up in there. Start by giving it a little WD-40, just to loosen things up. We'll let that soak in. All right, so with this now dropped down just a hair, okay, that should give us the space we need to get our drag link up in there.
No.
So the nice thing was we didn't have to take the whole tie rod off. All we had to do was loosen it, drop it down a little bit, and that gave us the space we needed to get the drag link back in.
Again, if you don't have ratcheting wrenches, you need them.
Ratcheting wrenches will save you. This is called a castle nut. It's pretty unique. When you put it on, you'll notice that there's a hole here. Unlike the previous stock bolt, we're going to get this put on, and then afterwards there'll be a cotter pin that we put in there, and that helps make sure that this thing doesn't get moved around while you're jeeping. All right, that's a good start. Let's get the other side. As you put this in, you may also have to move your wheels left and right a bit, just to get it in the right spot. There you go. And get that castle nut on. So everything's on loosely. Now we just have to tighten it down, put the cotter pins in.
One of these hand tighten things.
This is another good reason to have the right tools. Because you don't have the right tool, you're stuck using an adjustable wrench on this.
Which doesn't ratchet.
Doesn't ratchet. Tell me honestly, wouldn't you rather be using a ratcheting wrench right now?
I would rather be using a ratcheting wrench right now.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is guilt. So you can see here, we've tightened it as tight as we could and then cranked it all the way to give us that space to put that pin through. And then just take some pliers and spread those apart. You'll also notice that underneath here, this is the bottom of the vehicle, there's a space for a zert nut. A zert nut is used to allow you to grease that fitting later. Tricky part is trying to get it in there. Holy cow. Lucky for me, I've got a ratcheting wrench. That should make it easier. So with cotter pins installed, zert nuts installed, now we got to make sure we tighten all those jam nuts. Do you have a ratcheting wrench for that?
You wouldn't use a ratcheting wrench on those jam nuts.
That was a trick question you passed.
Touch and go.
But you're still using an adjustable wrench. A big, giant adjustable wrench, which is, in many cases, probably the best thing to use because that's probably what you got.
Get down here and help.
All right.
Hey, look, I can adjust it.
Can't do that with the ratcheting wrench. So, to make sure these gem nuts don't move, we always take a Sharpie or a paint pen and just make a little line. You can go back through after driving a while and check and see if that's moved at all, and then you can retighten it back to where it needs to be. It also lets you know if you used your Loctite the right way or things like that. So it's a nice practice to get in the habit of just marking your bolts as kind of these little check marks. You can check again as you drive.
So at this point, we're going to lift the axle back up, put the wheels back on, and see how everything fits.
That really just went on first try?
First try. So I get this first one on just to kind of hold everything in place. And now we can zip everything on, and then we'll torque it down.
So with the wheels back on, last thing to do is to torque everything down to spec and then take it for a test drive. See if we did anything wrong. You think that thing will keep knocking as we drive?
I mean, if it's knocking.
Don't come...
A rocking?
Yeah, I don't think that works. Feel any difference?
I have no knock. Problem solved.
And that's it. Pretty simple. It was not a hard install. I think total took us what?
Hour and 15.
Hour and 15 minutes, yeah. And that's with a couple, pickle fork problems, but other than that, just need a pickle fork, an adjustable wrench, and Loctite. Good set of wrenches, ratcheting wrenches. And that was fun. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was easy for you as it was for us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you think it's appropriate. And thanks for following.
Thanks.
Hey, Ethan. Look, we fixed the Jeep. Want to look under?
We fixed it?
Fixed it.
Oh.
Doesn't care.